The government of Venezuela confirmed the resumption of the dialogue process with the opposition on November 26 in Mexico, seeking the signing of the second partial agreement for the protection of the people of Venezuela. The government of Honduras declared a national emergency to combat the scourge of extortion by criminal groups. And Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel arrived in China on the last stop of his international tour. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is from the south. The government of Venezuela confirmed the resumption of the dialogue process with the opposition on November 26 in Mexico, seeking the signing of the second partial agreement for the protection of the people of Venezuela. The head of government's delegation, Jorge Rodriguez, explained that the signing of the second agreement on social matters creates a practical mechanism aimed at meeting social needs within the framework of the recovery of resources blocked to the Venezuelan state. It is also expected that the dialogue table will be governed under the methodology of the Memorandum of Understanding signed last year. And likewise, the United Platform of the Opposition of Venezuela ratified its willingness to work together with the government in agreements that ensure the welfare of the citizens. The leadership of the opposition sector pointed out that there will be no real way out of the crisis unless a comprehensive political agreement is reached to guarantee solutions for the Venezuelan people. And President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, reiterated his support for the resumption of dialogues between the government and the Venezuelan opposition.
If these dialogues are here, they will begin. That is the information that we have. And we want solutions to be sought after. Mexico will always help to seek peace, to avoid conflict, confrontation. And this is the home of all, and we are grateful that you trust us to come here to carry out these dialogues that we hope will have good results.
The government of Honduras declared a national emergency to combat the scourge of extortion by criminal groups. President Xiomara Castro announced the launching of the integral plan for the treatment of extortion and related crimes in order to face the crime situation in the country. In turn, the president instructed the national police to proceed to propose state an exception and to suspend the partial constitution guarantees in the areas where it's warranted. Castro pointed out that the state of emergency will serve to strengthen the immediate recovery of public spaces controlled by organized crime. The Association of Mothers of Plaza de Mayo mobilized on Thursday to pay tribute to the memory of Eve de Bonafini, who passed away last Sunday at the age of 93. The march was summoned through the official social media networks of the association and will take place at 3 p.m. local time around the Pirámide de Mayo. The mobilization will be far larger than usual, since this time they also summoned different organizations, including La Cámpora and Barrios de Pie. So far, Bonafini's remains will be cremated and her ashes placed at the base of the Pirámide de Mayo, in the same place where all mothers who for 45 years have taken to the streets in Buenos Aires in front of the Casa Rosada to call for justice and truth for the disappeared during the military dictatorship that ruled Argentina. And in Brazil, as part of the government's transition process, the team of President-elect Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva is advancing in talks with Jair Bolsonaro's ex-military. Lula da Silva's transition team has said that the idea behind the talks is to prioritize exchanges with former leaders of the three armed forces in a bid to strengthen respect for the country's institutions. Talks with the armed forces are taking place at a time when Army commanders from the Air Force and the Navy backed the anti-democratic acts staged in front front of barracks throughout the country. A report from the United Nations Children's Fund said some 2 in 5 of Haiti's growing number of cholera cases are among children, adding that youth suffering from severe malnutrition ran 3 times the risk of dying from the bacterial disease. Haiti has suffered a series of disasters in recent years, including a presidential assassination last year, followed by a strong earthquake. Cholera reemerged in the Caribbean island nation early on October after around 3 years without reported cases amid shortages of food and clean drinking water triggered by a gang blockade of its main fuel port. The COVID-19 pandemic remains the 3rd leading cause of death in the U.S., with an average of more than 300 people dying every day from the coronavirus. White House COVID-19 response coordinator Ashish Jha noted the pandemic is far from over and there's a lot of work to do as tens of thousands of people are getting infected every day. According to the official, the older people who live in congregate care settings tend to be the highest risk for poor outcomes, especially those aged over 85 and dealing with underlying health conditions. European Medicines Agency said the uptake of additional COVID-19 vaccines in the last few months is rather disappointing, with only 29% revaccinations for people who are most at risk.
However, the figures on the uptake of additional vaccine doses in the last few months are rather disappointing, with a European average of only 29% revaccinations in the people most at risk. More efforts to increase the revaccination rates in highly vulnerable individuals, such as the elderly and the immunocompromised, are crucial to contain any rise in hospitalization in the coming weeks.
We're taking our first break now. Join us again after this, but also don't forget to follow us on our TikTok account at teleSUR English for more. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez arrived on Thursday in Beijing to start a state visit to China. The head of state was invited by his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping and will remain in the nation until November 26 to develop a brief and intense work agenda. According to the press agencies, Diaz-Canel and Xi Jinping will hold official talks to review bilateral ties and identify new actions to strengthen them in the coming years. And let's review the international tour that President Miguel Diaz-Canel has made to several countries.
The president took off from Cuba to the capital of Algeria. He arrived there on Wednesday, November the 16th. In this country, he was received by President Abdelmadjid Tebboune. He laid a wreath at the Martyrs Monument in Algiers and reached multiple agreements for the benefit of the Cubans in financial, health, and infrastructure matters, with a view to the recovery of the island's electro-energy system. On Saturday, November the 19th, Diaz-Canel arrived in Russia. Upon his arrival, he laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier and became the first Cuban president to be received by the State Duma of the Slavic nation, before which he offered a speech condemning the sanctions of the United States and its Western allies against the Russian economy, and advocated a negotiated solution to the conflict in Ukraine. On Tuesday, he was received by his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, with whom he inaugurated a monument in honor of the historic leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro. On Tuesday, November the 22nd, Miguel Diaz-Canel landed in Turkey, where he paid homage to the founding father of his republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, and held meetings with the movements of solidarity with Cuba, coinciding with the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Diaz-Canel was received by his Turkish counterpart, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. As a result of the meeting, multiple bilateral agreements were signed in the areas of biotechnology, renewable energies, tourism, health, agriculture, among others. This Thursday, November 24th, the last stage of the international tour begins with the arrival of the Cuban president to the Chinese capital, where he will make a two-day official visit, during which he is expected to be received by the leader of his nation, President Xi Jinping, in the framework of the 62 years of diplomatic relations between Havana and Beijing, marked by their uninterrupted nature and constant progress.
On Thursday, a spokesman of China's defense ministry said Taiwan is an inalienable part of China and that any approach to strengthen military ties between the U.S. and Taiwan is an act of interference in China's domestic affairs. Spokesman Wu Qian made the remarks in response to a proposal put forward by the Sino-U.S. Economic and Security Review Commission on its newly released annual report, recommending evaluating ways to reinforce Taiwan's defense and enhance the U.S. ability to prevent continental China from attacking Taiwan for the sake of bilateral relations. And the Chinese Defense Ministry spokesman also made reference to the 52nd guided missile destroyer Xiamen and the absurdity of the supposed 24 nautical mile limit of Taiwan.
Regarding the destroyer Xiamen's response, I would like to give them a thumbs up. All zones delimited by Taiwan unilaterally are illegal and invalid and cannot change the fact that Taiwan belongs to China, let alone stop the progress of the Chinese plan in defending national sovereignty and territorial integrity. As for the clamor of certain officials in the Democratic Progressive Party authorities, I sternly warn them that if someone dares to separate Taiwan from China, the plan will take action decisively and deal them head-on blows.
Russia's deputy foreign minister said contacts with the International Atomic Energy Agency on the situation at the nuclear plant in Zaporizhzhia had been productive and promising. Speaking during a news briefing on Thursday, Sergei Rabkov said understanding over the need to introduce safety zone around the plant is growing. He added that the nuclear agency has been discussing the matter with Western countries. Repeated shelling around Europe's biggest nuclear power plant has contributed to it being disconnected from the grid on several occasions and fueled fears of a potential catastrophe.
We see what efforts the IAEA Secretariat is making to find a common solution. In this regard, we consider our contacts with the Secretary General and his colleagues as quite productive. They are promising.
And addressing the Coordination Council on Thursday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the task not only to increase the amount of military equipment produced for the Russian army, but also to improve its characteristics.
There is no need to introduce any extraordinary measures, but it is necessary to establish clear, high-quality, well-coordinated work. This is generally useful, but in this situation, it is simply necessary in order to provide our armed forces with everything necessary during a special military operation in a timely manner. I repeat, all issues are important here, including gear, ammunition and medicine, and monetary allowance for military personnel, construction work for military purposes, and of course, this applies to a special military equipment.
And Mathilde Panne, leader of the France Unbowed Party, welcomed the agreement reached between the left and the majority on a common wording for the inclusion of the right to abortion in the French constitution.
This is a historic victory, which first and foremost was made possible by the mobilization of citizens, associations and groups. If all of France votes in favor of this article, which knocks down all obstructionist amendments, France would become the first country in the world to include the right to abortion in its constitution.
We're taking one last short break now. Join us again after this. And also don't forget to follow me on my Twitter account at Eve de teleSUR for more. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South, more news now. The King of Malaysia, Abdullah of Pahang, appointed on Thursday opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim as the new prime minister after several days of talks to decide the formation of the government. The editor of the Royal House of Malaysia, Ahmed Fadil Samsudin, highlighted that the decision has been made after careful consideration and stressed that the king has called on the political parties to put aside their differences and unite to advance the country. According to the Malaysian newspaper newspaper New Straits Times. The new prime minister will take office on Thursday at 5 p.m. local time. And now let's review who will be the new prime minister of the Southeast Asian country with a population of 32 million people. Anwar Ibrahim's father was a parliamentarian and his mother a women's rights activist. He was a member of the United Malis National Organization, the country's ruling party from 1957 to 2018, for which he took over as deputy prime minister. He led the nation of an interim basis during the Asian financial crisis, and the success of his measures made him an important political figure. And hundreds of people marched to the French and British consulates in Goma, Democratic Republic of the Congo, demanding action from the international community to put an end to the conflict with the M23 rebel group. The peaceful demonstration took place one day after the meeting in Luanda, where leaders called for a ceasefire to take effect on Friday. The summit in Angola included Congo's president and Rwanda's foreign minister, but not the M23 rebels, whose rapid advance has escalated tensions between the two countries.
I mean, we are satisfied with this agreement signed, but we are still pessimistic about its implementation, especially since this is not the first agreement. There have been many summits, but the decisions have not been implemented. There is no guarantee that what was decided there will be implemented, so we are waiting for the implementation of the decision taken at the summit so that we can say that peace can be a daily reality for the people of North Kivu.
The race to take home the trophy in Qatar 2022 continues in a World Cup where the underdogs continue to surprise with excellent performances. On Thursday, Switzerland defeated Cameroon 1-8 to achieve its first victory in Qatar 2022 with a goal scored by striker Mbalo in the first minutes of the second half. Unfortunately for Cameroon, which had a better performance since the beginning of the match. The Swiss forward, who's playing the 6th World Cup in Qatar and is aiming to reach the round of 16 with the selection, was unopposed by the Cameroonians when Sherdan Shaqiri's cross from the right beat Andre Onana. And another goalless draw took place between Uruguay and South Korea at the start of Group H, a match that despite ending 0-0 was quite close for both teams. In the first half, they tried to score between passes and shots that failed to even the game. Likewise, the Koreans put up a good fight with the performances of Hwang Yu-jo and Mallorca club player Kagin Lee, but still without luck. And in the debut of Portugal and Ghana in the World Cup, the champions of Europe in 2016 and the African team made the people enjoy one of the most entertaining matches so far. Portugal won 3-2 with the goals of João Felix, Rafael Leo and Cristiano Ronaldo. The captain of the Portuguese became the first player who scored in 5 World Cups. And with a brace from Richarlison, Brazil defeated Serbia 2-0 to earn its first 3 points in the Group C of the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. The team coached by Tite is one of the main favorites to win the trophy and is the only one to have participated in every World Cup since 1930, 22 in total, with 5 cups taken home. Serbia, meanwhile, has qualified for 4 of the last 5 World Cups. And just as the hearts of millions of fans live the emotions of the Qatar 2022 World Cup, teleSUR joins the sporting event from the field, a show that brings news, analysis, reviews, and more to our audience. Don't miss it. Our show airs at 1 p.m. local time in Caracas and 12 p.m. in New York. Remember, from the field, only on teleSUR. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also follow us on our socials. We're on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For teleSUR English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.